Today is January 31st, 2017.
I like big drives and I cannot lie.
You other tubers can't deny.
It's the last day of the first month of 2017. I can't believe it. We're doing another episode of the news. So let's get the meta out of the way. Level 1 techs. We were a little bit light on videos last week because I was busy. Get a sort of friendly competition going with Brian Lunduke. And the name of the competition is You Put Linux on That? Yes. So I'm looking for ideas. Right now we've got the dot matrix printer and also the waffle iron idea. I've got another idea up my sleeve. I've contacted a few people that may result in a couple of videos. And I think Brian is working on some sort of animatronic puppet for his You Put Linux on That. So that should be interesting. If you want to go check that out, there's a video. Link in the description. If not, I suggest you follow the Linux channel because things are happening. Also, I was on the WAN Show with Linus from Linus Tech Tips. That was a lot of fun. It was very gracious of him to invite me. I was sort of filling in for Luke because Luke was traveling, I think, to the Nintendo Switch event. So you should check that out and those videos because, you know, that's a thing. That was sort of fun. I had a blast. Welcome everybody that is subscribing as a result of that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And now on with the news.
It's become a little bit of a repetitive thing. We always start with security because there's always security news. And this week we start out with, I don't think they did this on purpose. I think this was just sort of attack everything you can, but they've been attacking cops, law enforcement agencies with ransomware.
You mean it's not the Russians?
Who knows who it is, but whoever it is, they don't care about attacking law enforcement. So this police department, the Cockrell Hills Police Department, their entire system was ransomwared.
Wow. So they actually lost evidence files and police photos and just a whole bunch of stuff.
Now, most of it does have hard backups. So somewhere in some rusty, leaky evidence room, some of this stuff probably exists, but it's going to be a real pain for them to put it all back together.
Man, I just got to have backups. Need backups. Ransomware's the pits.
They wanted, I think, $4,000 worth of Bitcoin to open it up. But I don't know if law enforcement's even allowed to, negotiate with terrorists.
Would you take 3 bricks of cocaine instead?
We've got so many of those.
Oh, Lord. Well, not to be outdone, DC was also hit hard by ransomware people. Again, probably not Russians. Or at least when we say, when we joke that it's Russia and China, we're thinking that it's just, enterprising criminals in Russia and China and not necessarily a state-sponsored thing. Although maybe, I don't know, it's possible.
The timing was a little suspicious on this one because it was January 15th. And it affected the cameras in the D.C. area, which were going to be, extensively used during the inauguration. They did manage to get it back up before the inauguration, but it's interesting timing.
Yeah, it is interesting from a timing perspective. So it took out most or almost all of the cameras, and the systems that were infected were actually the storage servers, I think, if I'm understanding this correctly.
Yeah, I don't think the cameras were offline necessarily. It just wasn't storing anything. So they lost 2 days worth of surveillance.
Well, it's not just law enforcement. It's also hotels. There was a 4-star hotel that was hit by ransomware. And the fact that it was hit by ransomware meant that guests were locked into and out of their rooms.
This is kind of terrifying because they were locked into their rooms. There's no contingency plan for the magnetic lock system.
The batteries ran down. You're just trapped. It's fine.
They had to have thought about that when they installed them. Maybe not. But yeah, they immediately paid because you cannot have, this was their busy day of the skiing season, I guess.
Yeah.
The opening day. And you just can't have people locked in your rooms. So they immediately paid the ransom.
And they did say that they're switching back to good old-fashioned mechanical locks and keys because it's not worth the headache.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of interesting.
I don't see whether they're using RFID or card locks. Those aren't so much more convenient than a mechanical key that I would care.
Yeah. It's you can unlock the room from your phone. And it's I don't even really, why is this thing?
I guess you save a little bit from people forgetting to turn their key back in and running off with a little piece of metal. But could it really be, what do they pay, $3,500?
That could be a whole new business model. Is when you move in, you check into the hotel, there's a little thing there that it's we're going to say that you have to pay $35 if you don't turn in your metal key when you leave. That could be a thing.
They probably have something like that.
I think the idea with the metal key thing is that they don't want people to make a copy of a key, because that would be a great thing for a serial killer. You know, you just
I like that's the first place you go. Not a burglar. Definitely a serial killer.
Speaking of serial killing, somebody is serial killing Galaxy devices.
This is our update / patch of the week. There's always at least one. This time it's Samsung Galaxy.
Well, this goes all the way back to even ancient Galaxy devices. I think this exploit, especially crafted SMS. So,
and you don't have to open it or read it.
It'll just do it.
That's the terrifying thing about it. I mean, if you get it, this happens, and it's a infinite reboot cycle, which you cannot stop without resetting the phone.
What kind of phone was El Presidente using again?
It was an Android phone. I don't know what model it was, though.
I think it was a Samsung Galaxy. It was like an S3 or an S4.
I imagine he's the kind of guy who has to have like the newest, most amazing state-of-the-art phone like every time.
This is probably not good from a national security perspective.
Well, they made him turn it in, right? They gave him
I don't think so.
I saw a story where they said they made him turn it in and they gave him something that...
I think he's got the other thing, but I think he's got his old thing.
Well, maybe the old thing is for his Twitter and the new thing is for the POTUS Twitter.
Speaking of which, you guys have probably all heard about the card Skimmers. That is a physical device that you install, as a criminal on an ATM or something like that, and you can collect somebody's PIN number and the magnetic stripe off of a card. Now we've got chip and PIN. Well, the criminals are getting sophisticated too. Move over Skimmers. Shimmers are the new thing. This is wafer thin, thin as a sheet of paper designed to go in a chip and pin reader, and the whole thing fits inside the card slot.
Now, I don't know how hard it is to install these things. I've seen they've moved to putting those like warranty stickers on the panels now, so that if you open that box, it's going to have a void.
Yeah.
And it's got like, if you see void, do not use this. So I don't know if they can get that in there without opening it up, but if they can't, that seems like a pretty good solution.
I think that the article made it seem as though the criminals had a special card that they would insert into the reader, and then that would like stick inside the mechanism, but they don't have to get the card back out. They can stick in another card that's a special reader card, and the shimmer will dump its contents to the criminal's card, and so they can do something with it that way. Now, this doesn't completely break chip and pin. This is just a way of capturing the PIN number and some details that you would get in a chip and pin situation. So it's not that chip and pin is totally broken, but this is a really surprisingly high level of sophistication that the criminals are employing to try to defeat or at least combat chip and pin.
It's funny, we didn't include them this week, but there were even more cashless stories. Like the push toward cashless is still going on really strong. And the security is the big thing that they keep touting.
Whose security?
Yeah, really.
It's like, oh, your card was used at an ATM in Milan, and it's like, I haven't been out of the country in 10 years. And I was like, sorry, sir. There's just we believe in our security. You're gonna have to like prove it, because that's how it is with debit card numbers.
It's impossible that we could have made a mistake.
Yeah, clearly the impetus is on you to prove it. Well, the general theme of prove to us why you need that freedom, or prove to us why you need that, is also coming back with the DMCA. Yeah, how DMCA could cost you your job.
Now, this is not a new thing, but it's becoming more and more prevalent because mechanic shops are using tools, and they're usually third party. Mm-hmm. Like somebody else will make them and sell them, but these are the diagnostic tools. Now, of course, when something goes wrong with your car, a little light lights up. It tells you nothing. And you can sometimes get a diagnostic tool and read and figure out what it is. And sometimes it's something very simple. Well, Ford, for example, is saying that that list of codes is a copyright. And you have no right to know what it is. You must take it into a Ford authorized dealership or mechanic to get it fixed.
Those codes would seem to be factual to me, but I guess
data is not supposed to fall under this whole thing. You're supposed to be able to it's just information. You can't say that you own it, but that's what they're saying. And in some cases, they're getting some legal traction.
So what you're telling me is that, under this law, I'm not allowed to hack and work on my own vehicle because it might be a violation of the DMCA.
Well, I don't think they're going that far, but if you're going to hack on your own vehicle, you have to do so blindly. You're not allowed to know what all those little codes and numbers mean.
Well, it seems like that'll end badly.
It's kind of basically the same thing that Apple's doing.
It's like, no, only geniuses are allowed to work on our 4-year-old technology.
Exactly right. I wonder what the car company should come up with, like a genius, kind of analogous thing. It's like, what can we call our mechanics?
I think it's funny that the guy that invented the intermittent windshield wiper, he finally got $10 million out of Ford. Ford was the first company that he sued, but I think he was still suing Chrysler into like the 90s. So I think that he invented the intermittent wiper, before the 70s. And so it was in the court system that long because of the endless appeals and crap like that. Because Ford was like, oh, that intermittent wiper, that seems like a really good idea. Yeah. But the guy patented it. And so it was like,
Well, there's a lot of stories like that you can read about car parts where it's not just that somebody patents it and they start using it. These people usually go to them because what else are you going to do with a car part? They're like, hey, I made this thing. Let me sell it to you. And they're like, nah, we don't really need that. And then 2 weeks later, they're selling it.
It's like, that was a totally good idea. We're going to steal it.
Yeah.
This whole DMCA thing is kind of a follow-up from last year, too, because it was legal to hack your motorcycle, or it was maybe coming up to be not legal to hack your motorcycle because of the computer control system and the electronic control system in motorcycles. This is also a problem for farmers, too. I don't have an article for it, but, John Deere was arguing that farmers should not be allowed to work on their tractors because they might upload pirated MP3s to the in-cab audio system or something like that. And it's just like, Jesus Christ.
No, they have it's a pollution thing. Like it monitors your level of pollution. And if it gets to be too much, it routes the system resources into cleaning instead of actually outputting to the motor. And you have to let it run. You have to let it do that. You have to spend the fuel to let it complete its cycle or it won't start again.
Huh. Interesting. That's kind of neat. I go back to the wise words of Bunnie. And Bunnie, if you haven't seen it, is the one of the original hackers. There's an interview with Adafruit here. But his saying is, if you can't hack it, you don't own it.
Which applies to more and more of the things that you think you own. Kind of sad.
Did Nintendo just do a reverse double whammy?
This is along the same lines. Now, this is a convoluted story because, of course, when you look at it at face value, how could Nintendo do something wrong by selling you something they made? But there's a lot of nuances here. So what happened is on the Wii Virtual Console, Nintendo sells the original Super Mario Brothers. Well, people have looked at the ROM data, and it is an exact copy, including the headers that the guy who originally dumped it added, of the pirated version of the Super Mario Brothers ROM.
Huh. So what you're telling me is Nintendo was like, damn, people really like these console emulators. Let's download it from the internet and sell it back to the people?
And again, you might think, hey, it's theirs. Why is that bad? But if you look at Nintendo's policy on emulation,
yeah,
they are like, it's bad. It's a crime. You should go to hell for it. That's their official policy. And I don't think they made a corporate decision here. I'm sure this was some pragmatic engineer that was like, I'm not going to bother with, we don't even have these cartridges around. Look, I'm just going to get it off the internet. It works. Everything will be fine.
But he didn't bother to learn the file format even doing that. Otherwise, he could have stripped that off. So yeah, I guess that's, now is this also the same ROM that's in the NES Classic? I'm not sure we've gotten that far yet.
I don't know if anybody has tested that, but I mean, I'm sure if they used it once, they're probably going to use it twice.
There's some engineer at Nintendo that is currently being grilled by his boss. It's like, how did they find out that you did this? And he's like, I don't know. I guess there was a header in that file with a random number. I don't really know what's happening. It's probably fine.
I wonder about those other 30 ROMs. In that.
Where did those all come from? Have we got like actually a hacked version of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that you actually can beat?
God, how great would it be if somebody slipped in, like after you get to, like level 6 or something, it becomes the nude Mario. They didn't test it that far.
My favorite was Wheelchair Mario. The animations were great. I'm sorry. Well, switching gears to legal, we were talking about national security letters last week, which are letters that our law enforcement gives to people that provide a service on the internet, in this case Twitter, and say, oh, you have criminals that are so dangerous and so evil using your service that we have to give you this national security letter that instructs you to give us all this information, and you have to not tell anybody, and the only person you can talk to about it is your lawyer. Oh, and it doesn't go through the normal criminal court system. It doesn't go through the normal court system at all. You can't talk to any of those people. So yeah, Twitter, national security letters from the FBI. This is great.
Was it Google last week? I can't remember which company it was last week, but this is like every week.
Cloudflare.
Oh yeah, Cloudflare. So I think they had 2 that they've admitted to now.
Yeah.
But almost guaranteed there's way more that they still aren't allowed to talk about.
Yeah. Now, some legal experts have looked at these national security letters and decided that there is no way that this is constitutional. It's just not even within the realm of possibility. It doesn't matter if you're coked out of your mind reading the U.S. code and the U.S. statutes that grant powers somewhat similar to the powers that are being exercised here. Even if you're completely coked out of your mind, that's not what the law says. And so the interpretation here within the FBI, it's like, well, what's the meaning of the word is?
And Google is suing them. And I think a lot of these companies have sued them. It's like, you cannot make us do this to our customers. But the truth is they can until it goes through the courts, which, who knows? I mean, by the time it goes through the courts, whoever is being spied on, that case will probably have wrapped up.
I think now is a good time to be an entrepreneur if you're in Europe or Japan or anywhere in Asia, really, or anywhere in the European Union. I mean, you can start offering services competing with American companies, and people in those regions are naturally going to want to use your service versus American services because this is nuts.
Yeah, it was a similar thing happened with the NSA and the hardware backdoors. They're literally driving away business with how terrible they are to American companies with the spying stuff.
Now, if Twitter can be compelled by the FBI to do things that are patently unconstitutional and definitely anti-consumer and definitely highly abusive to one's personal privacy, what's to stop them from abusing Amazon the same way?
Amazon would never allow that. I trust them. They are excellent overlords, and I would welcome them to record everything I say in my living room.
That's probably bad.
Well, 8 million people feel that way. So the Echo or the Alexa. Is it the Echo or the Alexa? Alexa's the OS, right?
Yeah. Alexa is the assistant.
Yeah, so it's the Echo is in, was it 8 million? Yeah, 8 million homes.
Yeah. More than 8 million people own an Echo as customer awareness increases dramatically.
So that's 8 million microphones in 8 million living rooms that the FBI potentially has access to anytime they want.
Honestly, I think part of the problem here is not that people are apathetic. It's that people just can't believe that this is even on the radar of something that anybody would be concerned about and spending taxpayer dollars pursuing.
I guess, how do you miss it though? I mean, that's all that's in I guess if the mainstream media maybe just doesn't, people don't report on it, but wow.
Getting all your news from Facebook?
You really have to, it's fake news. That's why people don't believe it, because it's fake.
Clearly it's fake news. I mean, I guess people look at this the same way that they would look at, I'm going to forward this letter from a Nigerian prince that's trying to scam me to the FBI, and the FBI is totally going to dedicate resources to trying to figure out who that Nigerian prince is.
Yeah, or maybe they think, it's like, I'm not doing anything wrong in my living room, but they don't realize that, they have a few too many beers and smack the wife around.
If I could describe the level of paranoia and crazy as a scene, it's like there's a scene, there's a movie about John Nash called A Beautiful Mind where he's like losing his mind because he's a code breaker, and so he's a good code breaker because he sees the patterns in everything. But that also makes him a crazy person, kind of. And so he's looking at all the stuff and he's seeing all the numbers and he's seeing patterns where there are no patterns. And so I get the feeling that the law enforcement and the people in America have become so obsessed with data and so paranoid about everything that it's just like, yes, let's collect all of the data. Let's do all the stuff. Yes, we should totally collect everything from Twitter and LavaBit and all these other examples. And 15 years of OnStar stuff. It's really just, it's hard to take it seriously because it's just so not fueled from a healthy mental state.
Well, see, I see it a different way. And I think, especially when you're working with technology, you tend toward automation. Let's simplify this process. Like, why would I want to do all of this when I could just make a script and the script could do it all? I think it's that mentality. Like, what? police work, that takes time. Let's just record everything and we can go and listen to it if we need to.
We could just look through it and figure it out.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Google is in the fake news camp, and they want to sort of do their part against fake news. So they've banned 200 publishers.
Oh, which 200 was that? They're not telling.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, cool. That sounds good, Google. What did you do? We're not talking about it.
Now I would say probably 170, 180 of those are slam dunk. Yeah, we don't need these. These should have, they have no value. But there are probably a couple that are just like, they have opinions that Google doesn't agree with, and we need to get rid of them.
I wonder how this is going to shake out in the current political climate, but I almost don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
See, I think the current political climate is going to be like, just shut it down. Don't bother me with this.
Just turn it off.
Just get rid of it.
Are they talking about the FBI, the national security letters thing again? Oh, just turn that off. Ain't nobody wants to hear that. It's like, but wait, that's kind of important.
But we are not alone here in America in terms of cracking down and spying and shutting down dissent.
This technology might be used to think about things we don't approve of.
So China, now, much like international Netflix users, Chinese have figured out a long time ago that you can use a VPN to get around that great firewall. And they have a policy against it. They have since 2002. You're not allowed to do that. But it's kind of like, yeah, you're not allowed to do that, but nobody really gets busted for it. It's kind of like, pirating Nintendo ROMs. But now they're saying, no, really, we're going to put a lot of resources toward this. You better not be using a VPN.
Yeah, my firsthand experience with that was that it was very difficult to get a lot of bandwidth out of China. You could establish an encrypted tunnel and it would work for a day or two. But then after that, the speed would be throttled to almost nothing. It's almost like the Great Firewall was learning. I don't know if they've just thrown a million bodies at that, or they're looking at that and being like, "Oh no, this should turn off, or this should be a different thing." They also apparently seem to have almost an entirely different cellular network for foreign travelers. So like you go somewhere and it's like, "Oh, I'm a Chinese citizen," and they're like, "Here, you get this type of data plan on your cell phone." It's like, "Oh, I'm a foreign business traveler." It's like, "Oh, then you can have this phone that's unlocked." So I guess that's interesting.
But also, I mean, one thing they don't lack is manpower. And with the employment issues over there, I can totally see them just filling a data warehouse with terminals and be like, you monitor this, and it's just all day,
Would it be fake news to say that China is out to control the weather?
They've been doing it for years. Now, I thought, so, they're cloud seeding, basically, is what they're doing.
Yeah.
Which
is not a new technology.
No, and they've been doing it for a long time. But what's interesting about this is they're not just doing it for like agriculture and stuff. If they're going to have a big state function and they want clear skies, they'll clear them up, which is that's impressive. But they've budgeted, what was it, 168 million or something. So they're definitely going to move forward with their weather control operations.
Finally, our headline story: Seagate, who laid off a bunch of people last week, is going to bring 16 and 18 terabyte mechanical hard drives to the market within 18 months.
That they're using helium as a means to make these, and these are hard drives. These are not SSDs. So as people move toward SSD, I guess the one place that is left for hard drives is just massive, giant size ones.
But they're not really getting any faster, I think, is the problem. We talked about this a little bit on the WAN show with Linus. So it's like we've got our storage server, which is mostly 2 terabyte drives. And the transfer rate on those 2 terabyte drives is, 150 megabytes per second at the 150, 160, something like that at the fastest part of the disk. These 10 terabyte drives, I have never played with the 10 terabyte drive, but the 6 and 8 terabyte drives that I've played with are not really significantly faster than 160 megabytes per second. And so at 5 times the capacity, it's going to take 5 times as long to deal with. So at 16, 18 terabytes, unless it's 3 times faster than a drive now, because the transfer rate has been lagging behind forever, I think that's really slow. So, I mean, high capacity drives is good, but you can't get your information off of them really quickly, and that's a problem.
It's purely for storage. That's for your Nintendo ROMs.
Archival. Archive all the archive the internet, archive everything.
Yeah.
So Seagate did show off a 60 terabyte SAS SSD, but I don't know where this is in terms of like mass production or if it's going to cause the bottom to fall out of flash drive capacity or flash drive prices or, I don't know. But 60 terabytes in that small of an area seems like a good thing. But it can't get here fast enough. It really can't.
Yeah. I think we're probably going to experience a explosion of storage technology that's going to knock the prices out. That's going to be good.
Now, there's with Seagate and Western Digital, these technologies are basically at the limit of something that was invented about 6 or 7 years ago, perpendicular magnetic recording. And now they're actually doing, heat-assisted magnetic recording and even shingled recording where the bit fields actually overlap one another. You can get a higher density from reads, but when you're doing writing, it'll flip adjacent bits. So you have to write all of the bits in a given track, which is a little problematic. And so the situation with these drives are that we're hitting the limits of what can be done with magnetic technology. And you think about, 10 terabytes and a couple of spinning pieces of rust that are 3.5 inches across. That's a lot of data in terms of data density, and it's really not great in terms of transfer rates. So Flash can't get here fast enough because it's a lot higher data density.
Now, there wasn't a lot of hardware news this week, but there was a lot of really amazing science news. And the most WTF story of the week is the human-pig chimera hybrid that has been created.
I really think that Al Gore is involved in this somehow.
They haven't added the bear yet. You read this and you're like, wait, what? This probably isn't what I think it is. What is it? And it's like, oh, it really is. It was more pig than man. I think there was one human cell for every 10,000 pig cells, but still pretty freakish.
I think the plan here, though, is to be able to grow human organs inside a pig that won't be rejected by humans. Is that the plan?
Yeah, I think that's essentially, they did not let it was not allowed to be born. It probably would have been dead anyway. But they think they gave it, a couple months in the womb just to check it out, see what it was all about.
That's disturbing. Because what if we accidentally create there's just no end of what the imagination could come up with.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of talk about this in there. It's like they're trying to shut them down for those reasons. It's like, wait. We have no idea what could happen here. Do we give these horrible, twisted creatures some form of sentience? Like, is their life just going to be suffering? What if they get into the wild?
I've seen Planet of the Apes. One of those gas canisters gets into the wild, and we've got like sentient super deer. It's not a good situation.
Now, the really scary thing here is they let that thing go. I think they gave it 3 months in the womb. It had already written 100 speeding tickets.
Well, we have remote-controlled laser dragonflies as well in science.
Yeah, this was another crazy story. So, miniaturization, it's the hardest thing in technology, right? You can't make tiny insect robots.
Oh, wait. No, you can.
Well, not really. You make a little box that you harness onto an actual dragonfly. You make it your slave. It's amazing technology. They use an optical-based neuron control system, and it's like you're not moving the individual. Like it's not. You don't have enough sophistication to move the individual muscles and stuff, but you're just like you hit the fly left neuron, and it works.
I think there are some parasites that do this with ants. It makes ants want to go to the top of leaves or something.
The cordyceps.
Yeah. So this is neat. We've been able to do it with dragonflies. I'm sure the NSA is all over this.
Yeah, they talk about, it's like, obviously in the article, why would you want this? What is the purpose? And they're like, well, we could have better bees. And they don't mention surveillance at all. I was like, come on, we know why you want this.
Look, if the CIA or the NSA was doing this with cats in the 70s, you better believe they're spending tons of money on this for insects in the tens of this century.
So if you notice dragonflies like chilling out around your house, staring at you, check them for a box.
Now, this is kind of a follow-up. We had a story a couple of weeks ago about the Army doing some experiments on transcranial brain stimulation with electromagnetic fields. Well, good news, there's a startup company that's doing the same thing. So you can have this in your home if you want. You don't have to wait for that DARPA research grant.
Well, you can't in America or Europe. I think this is in Korea, maybe?
We can mail order it. I get things from Korea all the time, like monitors.
No, it's like an FDA thing. I don't think you can have it. But amazingly, this is apparently really simple to build, and there's open source software. You can make your own.
Oh, neat. Yeah, I'm going to give myself brain cancer.
Fairly, yeah. The one scary thing they talk about here is like, this is revolutionary. It's going to treat depression. So that's what they think the big thing is going to be, treating depression. Like they did one study, and it did better than the placebo group and the medication group, but the medication plus electric group was like off the charts better.
Wow.
So they're saying, hey, this is going to be a good thing for depression, but the sort of cautionary note is they're like, we're not at all sure about the dose yet. We're not sure how much we should be shocking your brain.
Or the long-term effects, or it's like, well, it cures your depression, but in 5 years you'll be a homicidal maniac.
Yeah, that's the thing. And it's, did you see the article? We didn't include it here, but 1984 is
it's the bestseller again.
But this is the Huxley side of the coin. This is like the Soma. Are we going to end up in a world where you go to work and you put on your productivity headband, and you go home and you put on your happiness headband, or your house cleaning headband, or whatever, and we're just it's Soma. It's our Soma.
It really is. I mean, when you read that and you think about it, and then you think about some of the quote unquote humanitarian arguments that we see, in science, it's like, well, the happiness headband really is the most humane thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it is a brave new world after all. Well, Apple has patented a vaporizer.
if you have all the Apple gear, if you have like Apple T-shirt and you're just decked out with iPhone, iPad, you got the AirPods, but you're like, how could I be more of a hipster? Wish granted soon. So yeah, they're getting into the vaping game, the iVape.
I'm pretty sure this is how we got Reavers.
I mean, the marketing campaign writes itself. Do you get it? iVape.
Oh, Lord. Well, it's just a patent that Apple's filed. There's no confirmation that they've got a new product line or anything like that. They may end up, outsourcing this to some other company. Like maybe they're going to partnership with Hot Topic or something, and and that'll be a thing. But because Apple, I don't know if Apple would strike out and do it this way, but maybe.
I can totally see that. See, I think they're banking on the loosening of the drug laws, and that becoming a huge market for their like millennial crowd.
I wonder if that's because they're hippies, or if that's because like they're actually onto something business-wise.
I think they're just reading the tea leaves.
I want to say that Forbes had an article that was like their sales were down 10% or something. We didn't include that. It's more on the business side. But I think that if that's true, Tim Cook is probably on the short list to get canned. But that might mean that Johnny Ive gets put in charge, or Johnny Ive gets some kind of a promotion. And I don't know. They need Woz. I mean, Woz could transform Apple back into something really interesting, but I think Apple is already on a trajectory to become basically a consumer electronics company, and there's just no avoiding it at this point. But I don't know that that's in Apple's best long-term interests if they really want to remain a technology company.
It could also just be patent trolling. We see the world is going in this direction, so let's throw some patents out there, and maybe we sue somebody in 10 years.
Yeah, that's a possibility. Kickstarter, we always try to warn you about the impossible science Kickstarters, although I think EEV blog and Thunderfoot and some of those guys do some much more abrasive, amazing videos. But hey, the next D1 Kickstarter was pulled. This was that really amazing sort of electronics 3D printer where you could 3D print electronics. Turns out some of their demos might have been printed by Shapeways. That's the accusation anyway.
Well, it's a little more sinister than that. So what people are claiming is they had Shapeways build these eggs that are very impressive, and then build a machine that deconstructed the egg and ran the video backwards.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
So they've been I mean, it's not, I don't think it's been confirmed yet, one way or the other, but it's a convincing enough argument that Kickstarter shut them down.
Well, clearly, if you can smash Humpty Dumpty, you can easily reassemble him.
Imagine, though, like, to take it apart on video in a way that simulates, that had to take a lot of work.
Yeah.
Like, they had to take all the engineers off the actual product that doesn't exist. It's like, all right, deconstruct this egg.
Well, I think the other big red flag for Kickstarter was that they were supposed to have a public demo and a live streaming event. Right. And they missed both of those things. And so this is not just, carelessness with the, product hype or videos or whatever. There's actually some other warning signs here, I guess.
And the video itself was not great quality that you would expect. I mean, how hard is it these days to release a 4K video, especially something like this?
Well, if a couple of idiots and
Yeah.
surely to God, some people that are actually getting hundreds of thousands of dollars of funding would be able to pull that off.
So we just want to reiterate, be careful about Kickstarters. You are often not going to get what you thought you were going to get.
Scientists have invented time crystals. This is also kind of a follow-up. This is independent confirmation. I think we'd reported on time crystals before, or at least I remember talking about time crystals at some point, maybe in a previous lifetime. And this is independent confirmation from the University of Maryland. So this is really exciting because this is sort of confirmation that we've got a whole new state of matter.
There was two, I think Harvard as well. There were two.
Well, I think that's the original one.
But they did it in different ways, but
Yes.
using the same blueprint. So yes, they have confirmed, but it hasn't been published or peer reviewed yet, I think.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
90% chance we've got time crystals.
Well, we've got the deal was that a Nobel Prize winning theorist, I guess, a physicist, sort of theorized this in 2012, and then so I think the first version of that came out last year sometime, and I think I reported on that. And then we've got the independent confirmation here. But what's interesting about time crystals is that it's a crystalline structure that is not in equilibrium. And so this is, if you have something that is, solid metal, it's, a solid chunk of metal. It's not moving. There's nothing, there's no physical movement with a solid chunk of metal. It is in a low energy state. Nothing is going on. Well, with the crystal, with the time crystal, you have a crystal that is not in equilibrium. There is actually physical movement inside the crystal, and the movement will occur perpetually because it is not in equilibrium with itself. And so they set up, I think, a row of like 10 ytterbium atoms, and they struck it with a laser, and then the electrons or whatever were hopping from one to the other, and it was in a continuous state of flux, basically, where the thing was moving through various different states, and it will do that endlessly. And so that's why they sort of call it a time crystal, is because that in time it's stable, but if you look at it in any sort of one moment in time, it looks like it has physical motion without actually consuming energy.
Yeah. And before you get excited and think, hey, we've reached free energy, this is very specific laboratory setups at tiny, tiny scales. It's not really useful except to prove that this can happen, and some amazing things might be explored in the future.
Yeah, this is not the invention of the flux capacitor. This is not, oops, I divided by zero and now have anti-gravity. This is just a really weird edge case.
But it does prove a new state, a new kind of matter.
Yes, and they've already started mapping the different phases of this new state of matter. So there's an equivalent solid, liquid, and gas phase of matter, and so they get to map that and sort of figure that out. And so there's a whole new branch of physics to explore here experimentally, and something else to add to the mathematical models. And so that's why it's exciting.
And how cool if somebody asks you what you do for a living and you tell them you're a time physicist.
I'm a time crystal lord. And in our last story is Mark Zuckerberg has dropped his lawsuit to force Hawaiians to sell him land.
This was in response to protests, which has delicious irony. Of course, Zuckerberg is one of the liberal main, they've become anti-establishment now that the establishment has changed.
Fantastically wealthy creator of Facebook.
And they wants people to lash out and show their displeasure. Well, some people lashed out and showed their displeasure at him. He bought a huge swath of land in Hawaii to build his giant compound. But in Hawaii, they have these indigenous people who at some point a village lived there, and people moved out and went on with their lives and stuff. But the village, the way the law works, still owns it. So there might be 30 people that owned it, and 20 of them have died. And the other 10, they don't really know that they own it or whatever, but legally it's theirs. So what he was trying to do is sue to force a sale to himself of all these indigenous properties that are inside his little compound.
So that he wouldn't have to give them right of way to get to their land through his.
Exactly right. He wants to build a wall. Amazingly, he wants to build a wall.
And he's going to make the native Hawaiians pay for it.
Basically. So, but he won't be able to do that now. So now if some, alcoholic Hawaiian living on the beach somewhere decides he wants to go to his ancestral community, he gets right of way through Zuckerberg's.
I like this because it's was this wrong? Should I not have done this? He dropped this voluntarily, basically amid public outcry. So Some people, I guess, in the tribe had already sold them some of their land or whatever to set up his compound. So it's really just about having a, first world problems, having to build your giant estate in Hawaii with tribal lands.
Yeah, he probably is offering them a good price too, but when he didn't get his way, he went to the courts and he got some backlash.
Well, that's pretty much it for the news. If you can think of something really clever that would be an hilarious response to, you put Linux on that, definitely do share in the forums at Level 1 Techs, because I've got to come up with something really good to challenge Brian Lunduke, and I'm just not quite sure what that will be yet. We'll see you next week.
Yep, see you then.